Major phone carriers make you sign contracts with rigid data plans to trap you into a kind of forced phonogamy. Sounds pretty insecure if you ask me. At Consumer Cellular, we believe in a more consensual and healthy form of phonogamy, free of contracts and more flexible to your data needs. This way, you stick around not because we force you to with contracts and fees, but because you love our phone plans. Like ardently love our phone plans. Phonogamously. Consumer Cellular. When freedom calls, we're here to answer. Call us at 1-888-FREEDOM.
Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game and wants a strong word with the government about the timing of its big announcements. I'm Kevin Day, here's Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Full disclosure here, Kieran, we are recording at a different end of the day. We normally record at 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. It's now close to 8 o'clock on Sunday evening because I had lunch with an old friend today. It was a long lunch, Kieran, and he's the sort of friend who insists on a different wine for each course and a digestive at the end. So let's launch into the pod and see how far we get before BAFTA decide that a half-drunk host is definitely not going to win the award. It's Questions Day, Kieran. Obviously, there's one huge news story to discuss. With Roman Abramovich being sanctioned by the UK government, an announcement made about a minute after we went out on Thursday. It led to a busy day for you, Ken. I think just about the only show you weren't on Thursday was EastEnders.
It was crazy. I mean, even by my standards, I managed to fit in BBC One, BBC News, ITV, Channel 4, Channel 5, and Sky News. I think the only thing I wasn't on Thursday was Pornhub, and they sent over a script, and I turned it down because I thought it was a bit one-dimensional.
Well, also you don't like improv as well. That's why you and Pornhub and all that. It's without a doubt, Kieran, one of the biggest stories I can remember in English football, and I think probably certainly in the Premier League era. There's a lot to unpick, but could we just start by discussing or clarifying just exactly what Chelsea can and can't do at the moment?
Absolutely. So in terms of bringing money in, they cannot sell match tickets. They've got 27,000 season ticket holders. So therefore, for each home match, there's approximately 14,000 people who are either sold match tickets or are coming from the away team. Now, if those tickets have already been sold, fine. If you're a season ticket holder, again, fine. You can still attend matches. We've just seen Chelsea play today against Newcastle, and there was a full capacity crowd there because this had all happened all in terms of the ticket sales before the announcement was made on Thursday. If you were at the match today, you would not have been able to go to the club shop, so the club's not allowed to sell merchandise. You are allowed to sell food and drink because if you've got people in a closed arena, for want of a better phrase, for 2 to 3 hours, beverages and a bit of food is deemed to be reasonable. So that is allowed. In terms of where else they can get money from for the rest of the season, the existing deals with the Premier League, with UEFA, with the merchandise manufacturers, so that would be Nike, and with their sponsors, those deals, from a legal contract point of view, those will continue, and those payments which have been received to date, those have already been banked. We're not quite sure where Chelsea stand with regards to what has happened in terms of both 3 and Hyundai, who are respectively the front of shirt and sleeve sponsor. But sponsors normally pay up front. So you'll normally get the next season's money in sort of July, August. So I don't think there necessarily be any instalments outstanding. So that's what Chelsea can do. What they cannot do is to sell match tickets. Is that they can also, in terms of what they can spend, they are limited, or rather they were limited to match day overheads of £500,000 per match. But there has been a subsequent revision to that, which has come through in the last 24 hours. I think Chelsea have made representations to the government, and the government says, Chelsea is a history, it's a heritage asset, it employs 800 people. The focus, of course, is people talk about the man, what's going to happen to the manager, what's going to happen to the players. It's a big employer. Nobody wants to see people lose their jobs, so the government has said you can continue to pay the wages. You can have match day overheads, which are now £900,000, and then it's got this rather unusual thing that they're limited in terms of transport costs to £20,000 a match. Now, Chelsea are in the Champions League. They normally would charter a flight. They don't tend to rock up on EasyJet and go to the nearest airport. But things might have to change, because my understanding is that to charter a flight to Europe, you're looking somewhere in the region of £80,000 to £100,000. If you're chartering a flight, let's say Chelsea are going to Manchester or Liverpool, and they'd normally travel by plane. That would be normally at least £30,000. You'd be looking at a hotel if they're going up the night before, which would be a further £15,000. So you're immediately above the limit of £20,000, which has been imposed by the government. So they might have to start to consider travelling up by coach, and nobody's going to be crying. Nobody's going boo-hoo, poor football players. But even so, again, I've got this from pretty good sources. The team coaches are normally £2,500 per day, and they're going to need them for 2 days. If you're going to a match more than a close distance, so it's going to need them for 2 days. And because of COVID, you're going to need them. You're going to need 2 or 3 buses because you don't want the players in such close proximity. So you've got an overnight hotel domestically. Again, you're probably looking at 15K on that. They're going to have to either sort of revise what they're traditionally used to, or they'll have to go back to the government to see whether they can renegotiate. But the government appears to have pushed back on this. They seem to think that £20,000 for travelling somewhere is a reasonable fee. So that is the one unknown. When it comes to wages, in terms of what can they pay, the wages can be paid. And here I think we have a possible problem in the sense that Chelsea's wage bill is £27 million per month.
Wow.
So, yeah, exactly. So we're recording this on the 13th. They're going to have a payroll in just over a fortnight. Do they have £27 million in their bank account? We simply don't know. But looking at their most recent accounts, they had, I think they had £17 million in the bank, and that was after sort of the receipt of that season's money or a large wodge of that season's money from season ticket holders who had paid in advance, and the Premier League who had paid down a deposit as well. So what tends to happen with Chelsea over the course of the season is that if they get to payroll and they don't have enough money in the bank, they go to Roman Abramovich. Yeah. He writes out a cheque for the difference. And then when they get their next instalment from the Premier League or from some transfer fees or from UEFA or wherever it's going to be, they then repay all of that or part of that loan to Abramovich. So if we take 2021 as a season, he lent them £150 million during the season. They repaid £130 million. So he was net 20 million. The previous year was a bit of a nightmare for them from a financial point of view. So he ended up lending a net 200 million plus. That cannot take place going forwards because his assets are frozen. And of course, his assets include his bank accounts.
And of course, in a normal season, they'd be expecting more broadcasting money around about June, wouldn't they? Because they like to pay that early so clubs can start speculating on transfers, so the broadcasters can report that. So obviously that money's not going to be forthcoming the way things stand, is it?
No, it's not. But the license expires on the 31st of May. Now, that means, officially, Chelsea Football Club freezes on the 31st of May. Right. But clearly that's not the wish of any of the parties, neither the club, Roman Abramovich, the government, or the Premier League. So we could have a couple of things happen before then. We could have the club being sold, or we could have a new licence if the club hasn't been sold to effectively allow Chelsea to play. Thomas Tuchel, who has been quoted today, is saying, "Well, I'm here until the end of the season. taking things day by day. And I've got to say, Thomas Tuchel has been very professional. He's not the chirpiest of guys at the best of times, and I do think that sometimes football managers get thrown under the bus with regard to this. What have we seen from Bruce Buck, who's the head honcho? Absolutely nothing. What have we seen from Marina Graviskaya, who's effectively runs Chelsea on a day-to-day basis? No, they've not come out. They've not spoken to the press. They've left it to Thomas Tuchel to have to explain what's going on. And I think that is so. Well, I think it's cowardly.
I think he's been fantastic, their manager. Actually, I think his comment. If I was a Chelsea fan, God forbid, it's exactly what I'd want to hear when he said, "As long as we've got a set of shirts and boots, and we'll play football." The players out of contract, there's a couple of high-profile players who are due to be out of contract in June. Are they automatically going to be free to talk to other clubs? Because they can't negotiate a new contract the way things stand, can they?
Yes, so under existing rules, they were entitled to talk to other clubs from the 1st of January, but I believe that some of them were having ongoing discussions with Chelsea about a renewal or extension. That cannot take place. So as far as the club is concerned, the transfer market is completely dead unless we have either a new owner or a revised licence. The main aim of all of this is to ensure that if Chelsea Football Club receives any money, none of this goes to Roman Abramovich. I think the government didn't just sanction Roman Abramovich on Thursday. There were a number of other oligarchs as well. Yeah. And our focus, of course, is on the football side. The media's focus is on the football club. So they tried to do something universal. Special dispensation for Chelsea. I think there will be flexibility. There will be pragmatism going forwards. And if you read some of the stories, there's already been high-level discussions between Roman Abramovich's representatives and the government as to, can we sort this, that we get a safe transfer of Chelsea Football Club to new owners as quickly as possible.
Well, this is the one element, Kieran, that really confuses me here, and I think a lot of other people, because after a day of silence, several potential owners came back in and said, no, we still want to buy the club. So how does that happen? So our potential new owners, the Swiss billionaire, will he be negotiating with the British government? And how do they ensure, because that seems to me to be very difficult, how do they ensure that at no stage will any of the money for the sale go to Roman Abramovich? Where will it go? Does it go into the coffers of the Treasury, who are then supposed to be trusted to give it to good causes in Ukraine? Does it go into escrow? What happens with that money?
Well, again, at present, it's not been yet determined, and that's because presumably Roman Abramovich and the government will have to come to some agreement. If Chelsea Football Club is sold, the proceeds, in a usual business transaction, would go to the shareholders. Roman Abramovich is the shareholder. His assets are frozen. So the shares cannot legally be sold at present. The government has hinted we can find a solution for this. So lawyers will be talking to lawyers to make sure that Roman Abramovich doesn't receive any money. Then who's going to be in charge of the sale? Roman Abramovich did take on a American bank called Rain. They were acting on his behalf. It could be that the government talks to Rain and says, right, we will allow you to negotiate upon the following conditions. A, money goes into escrow. It shouldn't go to Treasury. It should go into an independently monitored bank account. It should go into escrow. And then there will be an agreement between Abramovich and the government, or the government will make a unilateral decision. This money will be allocated to the relief effort for what's happening in Ukraine at present. And that's how we will go forward. Now, in terms of what's going to happen to the price, it is a distressed asset. The £3 billion that was being discussed or was being asked for, which I always felt was unrealistic. There's no way they're going to get something near that. But the bidders won't be put off, because Roman Abramovich's Chelsea is dead. Chelsea Football Club, under Nick Candy or Joe Schmo from Louisiana or whoever it's going to be, that football club is the one going forwards. if they are happy that the club itself as a brand, and it's a horrible word to use, and we've not mentioned it yet, but I should have mentioned, of course, people are dying, people are being murdered by Putin at present, and this is a sideshow, but this is a football finance podcast, so So it could be Nick Candy. I think he's a property developer. He's already said that the fan, he wants a fan representative on the board. He's certainly saying the things which will appeal to the Chelsea supporters' trust. We've got the Chelsea pitch owners issue as well, in terms of what we've always said that even bad people do good things, and this was, in my view, Ken Bates' probably greatest achievement in splitting up the Chelsea pitch into 1 metre squares and preventing anybody from being able to go and march away with Chelsea. So I think that the first or the last bids have to be in by the 18th of March. So we're talking Friday, and they've got to be realistic. Are we going to get the likes of Lawrence Bassini and the other tyre kickers around? No, they'll simply be filtered out straight away. Rain will say, if you're interested, first of all, we want a minimum deposit of £5 million. So that will get rid of the Looney Tunes brigade. So that's where we are. Can the sale go ahead at present? No. Will the government move things or change things that it will allow a sale? I think that's pretty much assured.
And finally, we did discuss this notion when Abramovich first put the club up for sale, but Ray Ward is one of many, many listeners asking how this is going to affect FFP regulations for Chelsea.
Right. This is completely exempt. It's a complete non-issue from an FFP perspective in terms of the loan or the loan being written off, because FFP is effectively comparing your day-to-day income, which is matchday broadcasting and commercial, compared to your day-to-day running costs, wages, amortization, overheads, blah, blah, interest costs, and so on. So a writing off of a loan is specifically excluded from the FFP calculation. So it is neither a good thing or a bad thing. It's a non-mover in the charts.
Okay, well, let's get on to some questions. This is obviously an issue that we're going to be discussing at great length for weeks to come. Our first question comes from Chris Mason. Chris says, if a player has their contract renewed on the very last day of their initial contract period, would that mean that the amortisation of any transfer fee that has been paid for the player is now set to £0? I'm assuming it would. Chris, Kieran is an accountant. So just like my accountant, Bobby Numbers, he hates it. He really hates it when people assume things like, I assumed I'd get some money in before the VAT bill was due, or I'm assuming we can hold that over to the next quarter. You don't like assuming, do you? But is he right, though, Chris?
Chris has absolutely nailed it. When a player is in their final year of contract, the book value of the player decreases to zero on the final day of the contract. So even if you do renew, then you're amortizing a figure of zero. You divide zero by 1 year or 2 years, and it's zero going forward. So that is one thing to consider. What we do quite often see is that when a player gets into their last year of the contract, it tends to be then when the contract is renewed or extended. And the advantage there is that if you've got a player that's in the books at £5 million, starts the final year of his contract, if you give him a 2-year extension, instead of putting through £5 million over 1 year, it's now £5 million over 3, because you've got a 2-year extension, and your amortization cost falls, which reduces your losses or increases your profits.
Alex Hare would like clarification on a subject that seems to fascinate our listeners in quite a morbid way. What is the financial situation with injured players? When someone signs for a big fee and gets injured for a long time very soon after, how does the club manage the transfer fee and wages when it's getting no return on the outlay, especially when they will probably had to pay for a temporary replacement? Presumably any insurance premiums would be astronomical. And also, I think we never really discussed the impact on the player themselves here. We got Nathan Ferguson. Palace got Nathan Ferguson from West Brom nigh on 2 years ago, and he's not been able to play for injury. He's just getting fit again. But there's enormous pressure on him to produce the goods now. We've all been waiting for him. We've all been told how good he is. And there's this poor young kid who's been desperate to play football, who's now expected to be brilliant, after coming back in after 2 years of injury. So it's often more. There's more to it than the financial aspect. But as you say, we're a financial pod, so answer that question first.
Right. If a player does suffer from a long-term injury, and at the end of the season, or the club realises that they're not going to be able to sell him, should they choose to sell him for anything like the book value which is in the accounts, what they have to do is to say that the injury is what's known as an impairment event, and they write down the value of the player in the accounts. It's a bit like accelerating the amortization charge, and you put through some large sums. We've just been talking about Chelsea. In the Chelsea accounts themselves for 2021, they put through impairment charges of £18 million, which means that either a player had an injury which resulted in his market value taking a catastrophic drop, and that can be that can be, of course, a huge issue from the player's personal well-being perspective, as we've been saying. Although there would normally be protection in terms of his contract. Or it could be that the player's not quite as good as you thought he was. So, who's this £18 million referring to in the Chelsea accounts? The clubs never name the player, and then it becomes a sort of a Twitter game of guess who. Yeah. I think that the smart money, from what I've heard from Chelsea fans, it's their goalkeeper who they signed for £70 million. Who now is warming the bench. So you're not going to be able to sell as a £70 million goalkeeper and recover that money if he's only a bench warmer.
Yeah.
Though his penalties would perhaps get him in the England rugby team. Yeah, he might get a signing from there, might recover some of the money. In terms of where we stand in terms of insurance, Alex is absolutely right. The premiums are very, very high because every time you go out on a pitch, you're one tackle away from the end of your career. So there is a Premier League policy, I understand, but I think it only pays out around about 250k.
Yeah.
So it might cover the wages for a few months, or in the case of some players, just a few weeks.
Yeah.
But the clubs effectively, what we refer to as self-insure. Self-insure is another word for not insuring. So I actually self-insure Finley, for example, because vets bills are extortionate.
Yeah.
You can get dog insurance. So because I am a dweeb, what I do is I stick £20 a month into a savings account, and that savings account is for Finley's vet bills. And I'm hoping that over the course of the time that he's with us, that I've managed to get it on the right side of the line. If something serious happens to him, well, we'll find the money. But and that works out a lot cheaper than paying the insurance premiums for either the player or if anybody does have an animal. Pet insurance is a rip-off.
Yeah, you'd be amazed how many self-insurance policies I have. The cat, however, if anything happens to the cat, I think the police would be investigating because we'd be getting a lot of money because she's insured up to her furry little eyeballs. The cat's got insurance. Oh, if anything happens to the cat, she's fine. Me, I'm done. Ian Barham has a question. Again, this is an interesting concept that's creeping into the game more and more, and fans are more and more intrigued by it. Ian Barham says more and more transfers now have add-ons and conditions attached to them that result in additional payments. Who keeps track of those? Is there a third-party organisation with a big database of all the transfer details? Or is the onus on the selling club to get in touch with the buyers to say, hang on, they've just made their 50th appearance, you owe us another £5 million?
Right, yeah, this is a cracker from Ian. As far as international transfers are concerned, they have to go through FIFA, and FIFA does keep a giant ledger with all of the details on.
Really?
Although it's not FIFA's responsibility to check that those payments are made. And UEFA do something similar because we have seen UEFA impose sanctions. And in fact, just in the past week or so, there's been a few clubs that have come out of sanctions when historically they have failed to pay transfer instalments. So the reason why UEFA would get involved is normally because the receiving club would report the paying club to UEFA and say, look, we ain't be paid. This club also happens to be in the Europa Conference or the Europa League, whatever it's going to be, and UEFA would then charge them, and if they found guilty, they would impose sanctions. On a domestic level and on a practical level, it's left to the club secretary. Now, we know from park football, club secretary is the black bloke that keeps, brings in the subs,
Yep.
and he pays the fines and so on. Clubs at a professional level have somebody in a similar role, and they literally have a little black book as to, we sold such and such a player on the 17th of July 2021. We're due to receive an instalment on the 17th of July 2022 of £6 million, and that they might give a friendly call a couple of days beforehand to the other club to say, just in case you've forgotten. You're due to pay us. Just make sure it goes in. Otherwise, we don't want to report you to the Premier League or UEFA or whatever. But we don't have to. So it's not policed as such, but it is monitored at a club level, because we're talking potential 7-8 figure sums.
Yeah, of course. In my experience of Sunday football, the club secretary tends to be somebody who's not very good at actually playing football, but has got a large washing machine. Or in general, their mum's got, we just can't find a place for you at left back. But club secretary is a really important position. Yeah, you have to provide your own blazer, but that's really, really important. Derby fans have probably been listening to this pod thinking, well, this Chelsea stuff's all very well, but we've not been mentioned for a fortnight. Well, it's your lucky day, depending on how you look at it, because we've got two questions about Derby. The first comes from a Notts County fan, Luke Williamson. Luke Williamson makes a very good point. Luke says, when Derby went into administration, lots of their fans spent money on extra season tickets and merchandising to hopefully help with the club's cash flow. Given that administrators are now in control, was this the best way financially for fans to support the club and its staff? And what slice of that money will have actually gone to those intended? And how much will have gone straight into fees for the administrators? As a Notts County fan, we've had our fair share of these situations, so my heart goes out to those fans down the road. Well said, Luke.
Yes. Well, first of all, hats off to the Derby fans. They by doing those things, they have done the best thing, because the first thing that the administrators have to do is to provide funding going forward. So they will have either had guarantees from, I think they did get some money from MSD Holdings. We know that they have sold players in the last few weeks as well. But initially, any money from ticket sales, from merchandise sales, would have gone into the bank account. And what the administrators do is they effectively freeze the club's bank accounts at the date of appointment. Any money in that they would then transfer to their new bank account, and they run something called a receipts and payments account. So any money that they generate over the course of the administration, from operational activities, from player sales, from property sales, and other sales, goes into that, and that allows them to try to cover all of the costs. If they've not got enough, they've got to go to the funders, MSD or Mel Morris via MSD. Some people say, but I'm not a cynic. I wouldn't say that. And they have, that has allowed them to carry on trading. Any money left over at the end of the administration, that will be added to the sale proceeds of the club, and then that money is divvied up. Some goes to what's referred to as the secured creditors, the mortgage holders. We then have the preferential creditors, which is HMRC and football creditors. And then we drop down to this next tier, which is the people who are entitled to 25 pence in the pound if there's enough money to avoid a further 15-point penalty. So again, the money which has been generated by the Derby County fans, and some of the stuff which they've done has been absolutely magnificent. Yep. There's been campaigns to buy tickets for people who can't afford tickets, just to get more people into Pride Park, to make the noise, to try to just push the club over the line in terms of getting a few more points and avoiding relegation. So hats off to all concerned with regards to that. In terms of the administration itself, I can't say too much. I got a phone call on Friday from an ex-employee, somebody who's been made redundant by the administrators, and what I've heard in terms of the behaviour of some senior people at the club, and I'll say no more than that, has been absolutely scandalous. And I'll say more at a later stage, but at this stage, shame on you, and I suspect you know who you are.
Senior people at the club or amongst administrators?
A bit of both.
Right, okay. Well,
bit of both.
All right, well, once we've got legal clearance, we will name and shame as we should do. But on the subject of Derby, and indeed the status of creditors, Gary Parfoot says, I assume Derby must have been insolvent for a while before it went into administration. As a company director, I am personally liable for company debts if trading while insolvent. So how does Mel Morris not have the personal liability himself? Also, how does football get away with the debt safety net of 100% when other creditors don't? I thought preferential treatment was not legal. Gary, if accountants don't like us assuming, they definitely don't like us thinking.
In terms of, there's two really good questions here from Gary.
Yeah.
In terms of trading insolvent, what does that mean? Trading insolvent means that you knowingly entered into a contract with a supplier in the knowledge that you could not pay them and you were not intending to pay them. So there's wrongful trading, there's fraudulent trading. There's no evidence of that in respect of Derby County. Up to the date of the appointment of the administrators, Mel Morris was underwriting. There's no doubt that he has put money into the club. No, and again, nobody should deny that. There are some things which might cause people to raise their eyebrows. However, as we've established on many occasions, I'm not a cynic. But if I was at HMRC, I might be looking at the level of money which is owed to HMRC by football clubs. So if we look at some other clubs in the Championship, we've got Luton owing 500k in outstanding tax. We've got Millwall, £800,000. We've got QPR, 2.2 million. All of those clubs have recently announced their financial results. Then we come to Derby County, and it's £29 million. Wow. And some people at HMRC might take the view that was the club deliberately not paying the tax? Was it using COVID as a smokescreen to not pay the taxes due, and then to effectively try to drop the tax authorities in it because the administrators are now trying to get them to take a haircut. It's taken a long time for legislation to change. HMRC used to be what's referred to as an unsecured creditor, so they were last in the queue. They've now gone up a step or two, and they're entitled, in theory, to 100% of the money before the unsecured creditors get any. So some people might take the view that the club again was gaming the system. I'm not going to agree with such viewpoints
because you're not cynical. We know, Kieran. Yeah,
because I'm not cynical.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also, I have spoken to clubs and said, well, how have you paid the tax? And they said, well, we've taken out loans from the EFL to which we are committed to repaying. They are interest-free loans because the interest charges are being underwritten by the Premier League, and that's another reason why they are so sore with regards to what's happened at Derby. It's not issues with the club, and I think you've got to separate the club from people at the club. Yeah. There's been a lot of dissenting voices with regards to the behaviour of some.
Does the tax liability of those clubs you mentioned, Reading, QPR, Millwall, that goes down on the annual financial report? Is it? Do they openly say we owe £2.5 million to HMRC?
Yeah. So in your creditors note, and you're always going to owe a bit because PAYE is paid in arrears, normally a month in arrears. So owing a bit is fine. And if you've got issues, then my advice has always been be proactive, get in contact with HMRC, and work out a payment solution. And I've always sort of tried to ensure that that's done. HMRC are not the devil incarnate. They're there to do a professional job, and also they're quite sympathetic to people's individual circumstances, and the same for companies.
Yeah, I dream of the day when I only owe a bit. That'd be well, and I can endorse that HMRC. I'm on Christmas. Half my Christmas cards come from various HMRC places across the country. Isn't that one for Fleetwood?
Yeah. And Gary's second question, with regard to why does football get away with this football creditors rule? It was introduced within the football industry when they started to set up points deductions for going into administration. And there was a test case between HMRC. HMRC did not like this whatsoever. There was a test case, I think it was in 2012. I can't remember the club involved, so I don't want to drop myself in it, but HMRC lost the test case at the time. They've never been happy about it. They may at some point in the future revisit that particular issue as to why should a football club take priority over a local supplier of, transportation to matches, of electricity to put on the floodlights, to the local pie seller. It does seem an anachronism that football clubs themselves have this special treatment, but at present that is the rule.
Well, talking of power bills, Kieran, it's almost like you've read Producer Guy's mind, which doesn't take long. Money and takeaway seems to be there. Mike McCarthy has a very practical question. Mike's question is, how much does it cost to run an undersoil heating system? And how will the sharp rise in wholesale gas prices affect clubs who use them? Will there be clubs who simply can't afford to use them, leading to more postponements in future?
Right. I've been in contact with some clubs with regards to this. Out of professional courtesy, we won't name them, but thank you very much. You know who I'm thanking. The cost is estimated to be around about 25 to 30k a season. Because if you think about it, August, September, October, perhaps even in November, you ain't going to be using it. So it's only used for a relatively short period within the season itself. But it's still a substantial amount of money. Is it that critical for a Premier League club? Probably not. But if you've got, remember, the size of the pitch is independent of where you play. So whether you're a League Two club or a Premier League club or even a non-league club, you've still got the same amount of pipes and you've still got that electricity cost. So if for a lower league club, it becomes a very substantial issue. In terms of what's happening to energy prices, and we're aware, I was looking at some research which came out today. I think the average house heating bill has gone up from £1,200 in 2020 to an estimated £3,000 in 2022 once the new tariffs kick in on the 1st of April. And this is, we're not Martin Lewis, but if you're on a meter, for heaven's sake, read your meter on the 31st of March and get your meter readings in, because otherwise, if it's an estimated bill, you could end up paying for an awful lot of fuel that you've not actually consumed. But that's likely to double. So, we're going from £30,000 to £50,000 to £60,000, which is going to really hit smaller clubs. Yeah,
when we interviewed Dale Vince a few weeks ago, the owner of Forest Green and also the owner of Ecotricity, he seemed to think I was joking when I made comic reference to the fact that my fuel bill, as supplied by him, had doubled in 2 months. But it had. And that's Ecotricity. I mean, they just need to pedal quicker, surely. I don't know what they have to do. But that's,
more hamsters. More hamsters, that's what we need.
That's one of my favourite Barry Cry jokes. He just said, my daughter's hamster died this morning, fell asleep at the wheel. Our next question comes from Tyler McLennan. And Tyler
he's
says,
on your naughty step. He's on your naughty step, isn't he?
He is a little bit on my naughty step. He may not know why, Kieran, but Tyler says, hello from America. Hello, Tyler. Then Tyler continues, with the series Ted Lasso taking the States by storm, I'm curious what, if any, financial impact there's been for Crystal Palace and other Premier League teams featured. More specifically, do we know how much Palace would pay to use Selhurst Park? And when Palace, Man City or Spurs appear in the show, does that mean Apple Plus, on which the show appears, have paid a licence to use the team's likeness? And with Selhurst Park featuring so heavily, is there no opportunity for Palace to leverage that to gain American fans? And have they tried to benefit from the Ted Lasso association? Well, if the Parsons Arms has been hosting coach loads of Ted Lasso fans, they've been kept away from me for for obvious reasons. Do you want to tell him, Kieran, or shall I?
Well, if you're not familiar with this, Tyler, Kevin was asked to audition for the part of Kevin Day in Ted Lasso, and he failed the audition, or rather, he was rejected by the audition for somebody of far less talent.
Yeah, they asked me to. There's a character, roving reporter character, and they said it's based on you. It's based on you, what you used to do. So we really want you to do it. We're not even looking at other people. It turned out that when they saw the audition tape, they were looking at many other people, one of whom got the job playing somebody based on me. But the fact that I mention it every second pod, Tyler, has nothing to do with it. It's an interesting. I can answer. I mean, I can answer anecdotally. It doesn't seem to me that if Palace have tried to leverage the association, that it's worked. There doesn't seem to be many tourists appearing at Selhurst Park just to see where whoever Ted Lasso is does his team talks, but I imagine it would be something that they could think about.
Yes. I mean, if we sort of go through the various elements of Tyler's question, in respect of the matches against Manchester City, Palace and Spurs and so on, they would have to pay a licensing fee for the use of the shirts of the other clubs. So, it's intellectual property. The Ted Lasso program is benefiting from the realism that it gives if Ted Lasso's team are playing against a known professional team. So therefore, there would have been negotiations. Would it have been a huge sum of money? I genuinely don't know, but certainly the people involved at Ted Lasso are doing very well, because apparently Jason Sudeikis is that the correct pronunciation?
Yeah.
For season 3, his per episode fee has gone up from $300,000 to $1 million. That's probably not making you feel any better, is it, Kevin?
I'm pleased for him. They never actually mentioned any money. They said there would be a payment, but in fact, I've probably lost out on several $1,000s. Is neither here nor there, Kieran. Really, it's the artistic integrity that worries me. But anyway. But go on.
I'm going to say, in terms of the Ted Lasso tour, I don't think the program's big enough to warrant that as yet. I as you know, I work in the city of Liverpool, and there are Beatles tours, and you can end up you go to Paul McCartney's house, and you go to Penny Lane, and all of these, the Cavern, all of these iconic places. I think Ted Lasso's still got a way to go before it reaches that stage where some entrepreneur does decide that they're going to do the Ted Lasso tour of London.
Well, see, if it had me in it, Kieran, they would...
Exactly. You could do it.
There'd be 10 or 20 more people. Yeah, that's probably what will happen. I'll end up hosting the Ted Lasso tour. That'll be what I do. They said, here's a bloke who couldn't get in it, but he's going to walk you around Selhurst Park to show you the trophy cabinet. That won't take long either. Nick Gittings, I like this question. Nick Gittings has a question about his club, Port Vale. Fun fact, Kieran, of course, Port Vale, the only club in the 92 not named after an actual place. And before you tweet, yes, that does include Arsenal. But Nick says you'll have no doubt seen during the pandemic that Port Vale were heavily involved in community activities. We did see Nick, and we mentioned it several times. Nick says he's a great believer in clubs being a community endeavour, so he's proud of the club and its owners, the Shanahans, for returning the club to this type of activity. But other than the inherent goodwill which comes with this community work, is there any fiscal benefit for the club in investing or giving resources and finance to community projects? I would like to think that the inherent goodwill was enough, Kieran, and I suppose they might attract a few new fans out of it, but it's hard to imagine that there would be some financial benefit to this, is there?
Well, first of all, Carol Shanahan and the rest of the family and everybody at Port Vale, a huge amount of respect, because having seen what they've said, it was effectively, we're doing the right thing for the local people.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is a lot of social deprivation around that area. Yeah. I used to run a potteries company, which had gone into administration many, many years ago. Yep. I've run a ridiculously wide range of businesses when I was involved in the glory days. I don't think
glory days is the right phrase there, Kieran.
No, sorry. Yes. So the Port Vale have done these things via what's known as the Hub Foundation, and they've done an awful lot for local children in terms of providing them with activities and workshops. And tragically, meals. Kids should not be going without food, and we've said this before. And I get a bee in my bonnet about food deprivation in this country. And they've also done fantastic schemes for people during the pandemic, for the older people who are suffering from loneliness, and loneliness is a killer.
Yeah.
If you for somebody of slightly more senior years, and also other single people who are younger, so huge amount of credit, and Port Vale fans should be so proud of their club in terms of what they've done. In terms of the fiscal benefit, in the immediate short term, no, but in the more medium term, there are always grants being allocated, and what the people allocating the grants tend to do is to look at the track record of those organisations which are applying for them. So, for an organisation such as Port Vale, for a club such as Port Vale, which has done so much fantastic work, they will have gone up the pecking order. In terms of future allocation of grants and similar money which is being paid out to invest in these schemes to help the local community. So the club itself will not benefit, but the schemes which the club has been associated with could potentially benefit in the longer run.
A very dear friend of mine, Nick Hancock, broadcaster, actor, comedian, Stoke City superfan. He gets furious because he rightly points out, I think, that the Potteries, the Five Towns, whatever you want to call them, is probably the one area in England least understood by the rest of England. Like, everywhere else has a distinct identity that we all know about. The North East, the North West, Liverpool, Manchester, Cornwall, Devon. We know about those areas, but we know so little about that part of the world. And most people wouldn't even be able to name the Five Towns. And as you say, it's an area of terrible social deprivation and poverty. So it's to Port Vale's credit that they've been doing what they're doing. Our last question, actually our penultimate question technically, comes from Stephen Shaw. And Stephen Shaw's question is about Tottenham. And Stephen says, Daniel Levy is monetising White Hart Lane with boxing, NFL, concerts and rugby. I like the fact that Stephen put rugby last there. But does Premier League financial reporting require revenue and expenses from these events to be included in the club's annual reporting?
Yes, they do. They count towards financial fair play. They would go under the umbrella of commercial income. And in respect of Spurs, what we've seen is since the move to the new stadium, commercial income has increased from £60 million to £160 million. So wow. The new stadium is contributing towards Spurs' ability to compete in the transfer market, to increase the wage bill, to be able to both recruit and retain, and I think we know who we're talking about in terms of retain players at the club, to allow them to compete at the elite level. So I do think what Daniel Levy has done from a financial point of view in terms of monetisation has been it's been a case study of perfection in terms of how would you like to see it done? With regards for his enthusiasm for the Super League and some other things, perhaps he comes out with slightly less credit.
Now, our final question actually is from us to you. You know how much Kieran and I love a football kit. Oh, we love a football kit.
We do.
We were approached by two lovely chaps recently who offered to help us design and produce our own Price of Football replica shirt. And rather than just seeing this as a tawdry merchandising opportunity, yes, producer guy, I am talking to you, we thought we'd get a full set of kits made, or two, and donate them to a grassroots club. Which club will be decided later, hopefully with your help. But in the meantime, the shirt will be colourblind friendly white, we think, but we need your suggestions on a crest or a motto. So far we've got a vague idea of Smudge the cat and Finley the dog flanking some kind of shield with the motto In Veritas Amortize. But if you have a better suggestion, then please let us know. And sometime down the line, when the shirt is produced, and Kieran and I had our first meeting with these people via Zoom on Thursday. I've never been more excited in my life.
Yes.
And Kieran will test you. I used to sit at school drawing little shirt patterns and colouring them in, making it. And one day I thought, I'll own Crystal Palace and I'll bring these kit manufacturers in and just say, claret and blue, sort it out. But having a meeting with actual kit manufacturers, talking about actual kit colours, was very exciting. So we're going to make this happen, and it will be available, but we're doing it to provide a grassroots club who can't afford a proper kit with kit, because we've heard so much recently from people at that level who are just struggling. We're talking about heating bills and all sorts of stuff. Just washing kits is getting difficult for clubs, let alone supplying them. So, but your suggestions on, if you've got any other suggestions on colours as well, that'd be nice. But just send us some photographs of some designs, and we'll see what happens. But in the meantime, I have to make the usual mention of the fact that we are sold out for the gig. Wimbledon, our first ever live gig, is sold out on March 24th. There may be 1 or 2 tickets returned. They might be able to fit 5 or 6 more people in, they said. We had a meeting there the other day as well. It's looking like a rather good show. We're putting it together. So
yes.
if you do still want a ticket for that, you can get it via, how do they do it, Kieran? Go onto the link on this pod. It's too technical.
Yes. Yeah. If you go to the show notes, there's a link, or you can go to Eventbrite. And I've just got a text from producer Guy this very minute, and he says that there are 19 tickets remaining. We've had this show, and also the meeting we had with the kit people. I've never been so excited in my life having a 20-minute conversation about collars, round V-neck buttons. I was in heaven, absolute heaven.
Yeah, I don't know what we agreed yet. I think we went for round, didn't we? Yeah.
I think we did.
Yeah, I think we all agreed the most important thing is as long as it's XXL, that's fine. So there are 19 tickets available because they made 10 extra available if we need them. So it would be lovely to see you there. It's looking like, as I say, a really good show. In the meantime, if you'd like to help us financially, always free to AirPod, then please go to patreon.com/priceoffootball. And if you have any questions for future questions pods, it's questions@priceoffootball.com. And I shall now hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
As always, folks, thanks for your commitment and feedback. When I'm up at silly o'clock trying to research some of these questions, which I genuinely love doing, it's because I know that you seem to enjoy the show, and also I think it's a sign of our professionalism that we are recording this on Sunday night, and some of you will be watching the BAFTAs and wondering why are Kieran and Kieran not there. It's because we're dedicated to getting the show out to you on a Monday morning. That's the only reason. Lady Gaga
invited.
But we turned them down. We turned them down. It's not the other way around, as some people might think.
Since I was nominated, it's like Ted Lasso. Since I was nominated for one and then didn't win it, they're dead to me, the BAFTAs, basically.
So if you want to support the show by a Patreon, that's absolutely fantastic. If you want to give us some good karma, and this is very much from producer Guy, he understands how the algorithms work at the likes of Apple and Spotify and so on. The way that you can do that is by going on to your app and giving us a review. If you could give us 5 stars, if you think we're worth it, don't, but hopefully you do. Then that will be absolutely fantastic. It doesn't matter who you say or what you say in the narrative. That doesn't make a blind bit of difference, but it helps us in the charts. You could say you would rather it be presented, and given that there are 19 tickets remaining, you'd rather have it presented by Paul Hardcastle and Scrappy Doo. That is a tenuous link, isn't it? If ever, and it makes no difference.
If you don't believe, by the way, that Kieran does get up at silly o'clock to research this, I had a WhatsApp message from Kieran this morning, timed at 6:54. Obviously, it didn't register with me till about 10:54. But Kieran was up at 6:54 to send me a message saying, "What time are we doing it today? Are you still going on your boozy lunch?" Yes. At 6:54, he was up researching for you. Yes, BAFTA, I'm talking to you here. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.